Hey guys, it's Will. So, one of the fastest growing markets in today's world is the space tech market. We've seen companies like Rocket Lab surge from $3 a share to $70 a share over the last year and a half or so. It was just back here in 2024, this company was trading at $3.50. And by end of 2025, you could see it surged to $80 a share, currently holding at about 70. So, this recent trend has been so bullish that we've had multiple levels laid out. You got the bottom level, which is kind of the 200-day moving average down here, and then you got the multiple levels getting up into the mid tier to the upper tier. Now, here's the thing. There could be two investors, right? One investor invests in the space tech market, and the other investor invests in the space tech market. So, investor number one might invest in the space tech market and invest in many different companies in the space tech market. Investor number two also invests in the space tech market, but let's say only invests in the top companies that are in that space tech market and doesn't diversify across many. Both investors experienced the market surge in the space tech market, but investor number one, that was holding many different space tech companies, gets okay returns, while investor number two, that was holding the prime segment of the space tech market, would have outlier returns than investor number one. So this is something that is, you got to watch in the market, because the best investors that I know that are making hundreds of percentages or thousands of percentage points on their portfolio every year are the investors that are identifying the prime segment of each market. And look, the space tech market is huge. You got big tech companies. There's a reason you see, SpaceX with the potentially over $1 trillion valuation. You got Lockheed Martin is there. So NASA is one of the biggest, obviously. You got Amentum, you got Voyager Space, you have ASTS, you got Planet Labs, Lunar, Black Sky. And if you ask, any normal AI, or you do any search on Google, what are the best space tech companies? You probably get like, Leidos, Lockheed Martin, a few others if you're searching over the last year or two. And it wasn't until, maybe the last few months that when you ask, you get names like Rocket Lab or Lunar Space or Black Sky or Redwire or Planet Labs. But these are the companies that we've been talking about for the last year. And believe it or not, I was introduced to not just ASTS, but Rocket Lab at $3 a share as well. In fact, I have a friend that works at Rocket Lab, and I've been watching this stock for years, and we've seen it holding that $3 price point for years, even though they were climbing massively in the value that they provide. So, all that to say that investor number one chooses the same market as investor number two, but they're going way too broad, whereas investor number two could have better returns because they focus on the prime segment. So, what is the prime segment of the space tech market? And how can you know when to catch these stocks? Because I could look at, Rocket Lab, and we could talk about the future in just a second, but ultimately, it's already made it to $70 a share or $80 a share. Will it have more room to run? We can get into it, but again, I don't want to just cover something that already went up. Let's talk about how we find these moves so you can do the same. So, the prime segment of the market is going to be the companies that are the irreplaceable or hard to replace company that the larger companies are relying on for the success of their business. So when you can find smaller companies that are enabling other companies to succeed, now you're going big. See, a lot of people, they look at the companies and say, what are they doing for consumers? Or what are they doing that's cool? But they shouldn't be asking that question. You see, the question has always been, and the answer for any successful business or successful investment or successful, family or just successful life is what? It's the people. It's the person. It's the who you become, or it's the who is a part of said investment that's going to make the difference. Have you ever heard you can't make a good deal with a bad person? Same thing is true in stocks. You can't have a good investment without knowing the who around the company. The who is, I mean, you can, but you might get lucky. The who of Rocket Lab is that they're providing for all the other space tech companies. And there's a few ways to to be notified by this. Let's talk about some of the news that came out, and let's talk about why it's made the difference. So in the market, we know they're growing, but what changed was you saw increased potential government spending. So, for example, with Rocket Lab, they had much more spending going on from the US government. So that was number one. In fact, one of the missions that they recently secured, and it might be already in their missions launched, is with NASA. Here it is, I believe. So they recently came about. NASA was trying to find a company that could launch to Mars, and they were quoted, $50 billion or $20 billion to do it, and 10 years. Whereas Rocket Lab said, hey, we could do it for $1 billion or 2 billion, and we could do it in about 2 or 3 years. So they're doing it fast. So that was an indicator. Second, you see them launching for other companies that are growing in the space tech market. So for example, Black Sky. Black Sky is a company in the space tech market that has this space-based intelligence. You can see how they look. And they've been securing government contracts because they have this satellite that can track all of the planes, the cars, people, events, all the human things that are happening down on Earth. They're able to track with AI via their satellites. And if you pay attention to Rocket Lab, you kind of look at their recent missions. What are the upcoming space companies like in the world? And then just go look like Air Force Research Laboratory or NASA or Black Sky, and go look at the missions that they got up and coming, and you'll have an idea of, hey, this company Rocket Lab is the company that others are relying on. And so there's the market validation. The real world usage is a result of the reliance on this company from others. Okay. And then just in general, this was one of those moments where some people think Rocket Lab was like a rocket and just blew up this year, but it's not been a fast success. In fact, you could go back to 2022 and you can see the NASA contracts, the NASA launches that they were already launching, not in the future. They had already launched the Black Sky launches, all of these. What's becoming big right now is the Starlink internet that's running this live stream right now, for example, and that's a big market, and they're launching for other companies that are competing with SpaceX for the Starlink internet, right? Canais is one. And so you got all these things pointing to growth. So let's get into the financials. Now that they've surged to 37 billion, which is probably about 1/10 the real world market cap of SpaceX currently. It's possible that it is near a trillion, but I think, yeah, just earlier this year they were at 250 billion, and that was SpaceX. And now they're eyeing a trillion, but they're probably around 400 to 500 billion dollars SpaceX. And basically, like clockwork, Rocket Lab has maintained about 1/10 the market cap of SpaceX, and they're currently at 37 billion. Now, if you look at their revenues, they have been increasing about 50% year over year. Their revenues have gone from under 100 million a quarter to recently about 155 million, and they've been consistent. So there was that. Now they're in the same conversation as Lockheed Martin, Northrop, RTX, and others. So now they're starting to get probably the Google search. They're probably starting to get the AI recommendation that's driving their business investor side as well. Their total cash has increased. They're at $2 billion. That's up 100% year over year. That's great, but again, still pretty far off from the current market cap from a financial perspective. But they continue to build the infrastructure. So while their financials, we could see potential pullbacks in the near term, the infrastructure in the long term looks bullish for Rocket Lab, and they could be a $200 stock for all we know. But when you're looking at the current levels, $70 a share, you could see we're establishing a new level, which was the previous resistance of these two levels. So now we're getting into the technicals. Previous resistance of these two levels around $60, $65, then acted as a breakout and then acted as a support, which they did not hold, and then shot back up above. So nearest support level is going to be a sell down of just about 5% down to that $65 resistance would be the nearest support level with, if they continue up, $80 price target in the near term if they really rocket more with this bullish uptrend. But right now, potentially eyeing that sell down to $65. And it wouldn't be absurd to see them sell back down into $55 or further, given that their nature of their market is very volatile. But nevertheless, they're building a lot of value in the long term. How are they building value in the long term, and what have they done recently that would lead us to believe that? Well, not only are they having the launches coming up with NASA that are very large, they just signed an $816 million prime contract to build missile defense satellites here for the US Space Force. So, again, we mentioned more government spending in the United States on defense, and we see that here in an $816 million contract said to be delivered here, and potentially, I mean, it's almost $1 billion for supplying items such as payload, solar solutions, altitude or attitude determination, and control components, software, all that stuff for the government. And so this is a very, very large. You can see they have $1.3 billion in SDA contracts, and they already have an existing $515 million awards. So more than $1.3 billion contract value now awarded to Rocket Lab by SDA demonstrates strong confidence in Rocket Lab's growth. I mean, that's exactly what we see. And the U.S. Space Development Agency, that's the SDA, is using Rocket Lab heavily. So we see them continue to build momentum. We see this contract here that's going to most likely guarantee revenues into the next few years. And so that's why they could be a $100 stock or more in the long term. We could see them get up into those levels, if not further. So that's how it looks with Rocket Lab. Again, things are looking good. We see a sell down here. When you're looking at projections, let's pull it up here. So projections, according to the Prophecy app, which we are going to use Google's Gemini, anticipate a 5% gain over the next month. All right, so they do, as you can see, they got a support level holding around $70 a share, which maybe they can hold into this next week. And then the longer term, the EMA, if they bounce there, the targets for that is up to, again, about $75 over the next month, according to Gemini. Now, the other thing to consider when loading the analysis is potentially up to that $75 range is where they might have their next level of support, and that their next significant resistance would be up in that $80 area. How is that a resistance if they've never reached $80 a share? Once again, it's kind of tying into what we were just saying, and the AIs are getting really smart because look at that. They really were just talking about what we were just talking about, which is this kind of trend. Okay, so continuing, let's say that they do find a $70 support level and they can continue this here. Maybe they sell down as low as 65, but we'll see if they hold 70. But again, kind of contributing back up to this $80 level and continuing to rally in this instance here. Now, they may say that sell down to 65. That's just something to watch. But overall, they got strong support levels around the $65 to $70 range, which they've had before. And they'd be looking to continue back up to $80, which could happen from here, about a 10% increase. Okay, and then from if they sell down further, we could see about a 20 to 25% increase if they sell down further. So that's how it looks in the near term. We'll see if any opportunities present themselves for the shorter term trades. We do continue to hold Rocket Lab in the long term as we love the company's growth. And also I have a friend that works there and I always love to hear what's going on there. Space exploration is the future. So future trades, things like that, if we do enter any short-term trades, we most likely would use our profits plan, which you can grab for free in the first link in the description. But essentially what you do is, we could enter $70 a share. Let's say it pulls down to that 65 and we get, more shares for a trade or something like that. We may be looking for a recovery. we may look for that, let's say $80 price swing. If we were to invest, be a $68 stop, let's say, with a 2.5% negative stop, looking for about 10 to 12% gain in a short-term trade, something like that we may do. And we oftentimes do that in the short term. So yeah, a lot of bullish momentum on Rocket Lab to watch, but the short term could see some volatility. So having a plan just like the one I showed you would be key, because you got to manage your risk if you're in it for the short term, because volatility hits, especially in the space tech market. But that's the beauty of it. It's having a plan. You minimize risk, maximize reward. If you ever want to tune on into our daily live trading sessions, we oftentimes trade at market open. In Stockmates, we're there Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll be there tomorrow morning and would love to see you there. There's a holiday sale still running. You could use the code down below, and it's the second link in the description down below. If I earned your thumbs up, hit the like button. Do consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.